Across the palisade at the Holiday Inn, the Mujahideen barricades, and just walk right through, past the bullhorns and sleepy 47s, right by the coalition guards. I'm in the back of the second floor basement. I'll have my editors arrange for payment. Come to me now, you are warming weather. Come to me now, the kind that comes with sandbags along the river. Wear your aquamirabilis dotted on your pulse points, a miraculous transformation, my aching joints. You are a vision in the air, cheap lipstick, bleached hair. Oh, dressed like that, you are a flag of a dangerous nation. Oh, dressed just like that, you are some kind of declaration. Come to me now, you are warming weather. Come to me now, the kind that comes with sandbags along the river. Here cowboy bars and dance clubs don't exist. The trans manual says just stand alone and then shift and shift. Come to me now, you are warming weather. Come to me now, the kind that comes with sandbags along the river.
Oh, hello.
So,
We're live on YouTube. Hello, John.
it's great to see you, Brian. How are you doing?
That is it's a complicated, well,
A
it's
loaded
a
question.
with a complicated answer, I suppose, is the best way to put it. This is something that we've been talking about doing, I think, basically since the beginning of quarantine.
Yes.
Some stuff happened to me, and then you have been, it sounds like, busier than ever in spite of the fact that there's been a worldwide shutdown.
Yeah, I've somehow managed to be like as busy as pre-COVID. I mean, the first month of the shelter in place, I've never had more time. I've never been like probably more, I don't know, kind of like shocked and confused in my life. I've never slept better. I've also never been more anxious, and I've never had more time. It was just a very confusing month, probably the same for you. And but now things feel for my schedule totally back to normal.
The sleep thing is interesting. You know, obviously it sounds like those two things are or should be at odds with each other, being incredibly anxious and getting a lot of sleep. I found myself, I actually had a fairly similar experience on that front. I was, I mean, it's completely altered my sleep schedule where, you know, we're doing this at 7, we might end around 9, which is like pretty late for me. I've really, and I think this has happened to a lot of people, but I've defaulted into kind of old man mode where I'm going to sleep at about, you know, like a late night is 10 o'clock, and then I will wake up at somewhere between, you know, 5 and 6:30, and then just go for like a 5-mile walk in the morning to start things off. But it's, I mean, that at least is nice, and that is something that's kind of helped me regain my sanity a little bit. There was a period of, well, let me preface this. So for those people who don't know me, and you were alluding to this, around late March, early April, and I mean, I'm in Queens, so things were like super bad here. And right around that time that happened, actually, I was doing the second of these, we were calling them housebound shows at the time, where I would just have a friend, you know, perform some music. And I was doing one with my friend, Irene, who's in Spain, and we were doing it late my time, early her time. And my face started feeling a little bit weird during the conversation. Didn't really think much of it. After the stream is done, I do like a little, you know, processing to get things in order on YouTube. And I looked at my face and I noticed that my little mustache was lopsided. Just looked a little weird. Looked like
So you didn't feel anything, huh?
I was slurring my speech a little bit, but
Yeah.
It was like, it was late, you know.
Yeah.
Shit happens, right? Not the weirdest thing in the world. And then I woke up the next morning and had just lost just all movement in the right side of my face. It just basically happened overnight. So I've been dealing with Bell's palsy for going on, I think, like 5 or 6 months at this point. Obviously, heading in the right direction now.
Yeah.
But I had I had a not great experience where I gave it about a day just to see, you know, maybe it would miraculously heal itself. I've not dealt with a lot of major health problems in my life.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like a day or two in, I went to an urgent care doctor around the corner from here, and he was talking. He diagnosed it right away. It's, you know, it's not super common, but common enough that he knew exactly what it was. And then he said, "Are you worried?" And I said, "Yeah, you know, I guess I'm a little bit worried." And he said, "Well, good, you should be."
Whoa.
And, you know, proceeded to explain that there's like a certain percentage, 20% of people who just don't really recover from it at all. But which is a very long way of explaining that he put me on steroids and antivirals, and on the antivirals, he basically said you absolutely cannot get sick. If you get a cold, if you get a virus while you're on antivirals, it will just completely destroy you. So there were about 2 months there when I just wasn't. I literally wasn't leaving my apartment. Wasn't, you know, meeting anybody in person, and because of the face situation, I just wasn't able to even do Zoom calls. I wasn't even able to, you know, to talk to people remotely. But, you know, when I did, so the first time I did a walk around the corner, I just, like, my entire body was on fire because it had been so long since I left my apartment that just walking.
Damn.
But now I'm doing, like, you know, I did 10 miles this morning, walked across the bridge into the city.
That's awesome.
My ass looks great.
Yeah. Boom.
I put on some quarantine weight, but it, you know, it's finally starting to come off. So that's how I've been. You look like, you know, at least, like, obviously social media is perhaps not the greatest insight into someone's life, but it looks like you've been enjoying yourself in Los Angeles.
Yeah, well, social media. Oh, by the way, Brian, can you turn up the output of your mic just because I can barely hear you on my side?
Okay,
and just
let me
like,
get a little bit closer. It might be.
okay, good.
Is that, yeah, I'll turn up the gain a little bit.
If there's any way to turn up the, because I'm maxed out over here, and usually this iPad's like super loud.
Yeah, that's odd. It should be turned up all the way here.
Oh, boom! That just went super loud.
Oh, is that good? Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, great. My gain was very low.
Killer.
So,
good.
Did you move? You moved to LA prior to the pandemic, right?
I did. I moved last July, and I'd been going back and forth to LA for like a while, and I was like oddly staying the house that I'm renting now in Filipino Town. I was staying in the guest bedroom here. It was rented by this producer named John Congleton, and he was kind of like encouraging me to move here, and he ended up like moving out, getting a building to build a studio, and he basically just was like, why don't you take over the lease? It's cheap. The landlord doesn't live here. They won't raise the rent ever. And I like kind of accelerated my plans to move here just to kind of get this house. And I gotta say, right before COVID, I was like, maybe it was like the happiest year that really ever. It was just, it felt like an amazing like rebirth for me. And then when COVID hit, I definitely like, it's like COVID agrees with some people, you know, like introverts and people that like to be kind of like woodshedding. And I make all of my money from touring, and I derive all of my pleasure from like being with friends and connecting and communicating and like being outside, and I'm very social. So it was like really, really bad for me. And I've kind of like had to readjust, and things are not, no, I mean, everyone is in small germ bubbles here. So it's like definitely nothing's really back to normal at all. But I basically just made some adjustments to what I was doing. And one of them is I go to the beach probably 3 or 4 times a week with friends. And that is like saved me, because I don't like having all this time on my hands. I like being busy. I like working. I'm a workaholic. I like touring all the time. I like recording, and I like hustling and producing records, and like everything that I do and lean on is off the books. It's off the table. So
yeah, I mean, you had obviously, and we'll get to this in a bit, but you know, you had the tiny telephone studios, so it looked like you were busy from the outside, in that if you weren't recording or touring on music, that you were a pretty active participant in the studio.
Yes, yeah, and I have been back and forth. I've been going back and forth to record a new record, so that's definitely been like a big deal this summer. Like that's been going on all summer, and I'm close. I think we have 4 more days in November, and then that record's done. And I have a recording studio in like a very small, modest recording studio in the kind of like the 2-car garage of this house. So I do a lot of work there. But I really, really miss touring. Like, I mean, I spend at least a third of my time touring and or getting ready for tour, or like preparing for tour. And I really love that shit. That's like it's so complementary to making records that I can't really disconnect the two, you know?
Did you have a tour lined up? Were you already doing something when all of this hit?
Yeah, I was in Europe when like Spain got locked down. I think we had just left Spain a couple days before. We were really kind of like outrunning it. And
yeah, Spain was a few weeks before we got it here in the States.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, the last show that I played, now this is psycho, but this is part of that like crazy show must go on thing. But I was on it. I was opening up for Not a Surf, and it was a big tour. You know, some of those rooms were 3,000 people. And so we were in a tour bubble. We were in a bus. We were, you know, like all of us were just like, show must go on. Let's just keep fucking outrunning this thing. So we went from like Italy to France to Spain to the UK. Yeah. And then there was just a point where, I mean, we were in Manchester, and I remember being at the merch table, and I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, what's happening? Like, we were so deluded. Like, everyone was so deluded that this was just gonna like be like SARS or avian flu, or just something that never really like, you know, like caught like got traction in the West. And so when that happened, we all of us changed our flights, and then but we had another tour that was starting 2 weeks later, and that whole tour got wiped out. And then I had tons of tours this summer. I mean, last summer that got wiped out. But like that's everyone we know. You know, every musician just has like I mean, I had a lot of friends whose records were just like completely shelved because of COVID, and like.
Yeah, I did one of the final interviews I did before, like one of the final in-person interviews I did was with Colin Newman of Wire, you know, and I don't remember the exact timing, you know, I guess that would have been probably right around mid-March, and you know, I kept asking him like, are you like, are you sure? I mean, you know, he's got to be, you know, in his like what 70s at this point. You know, are you sure this is a good idea? And I just think there, you know, we were a little bit deluded, and you know, and in our retroactively in our defense, you know, like you said, we had been through H1N1, you know, SARS, swine flu, all of these things before, and none of them really did pan out to be much beyond these bubbles. So it was really, even as somebody, you know, like me, who's in the media and follows this stuff really closely, it was hard to gauge. I don't think anyone really had much of an idea how big of a thing this would be, you know, and I was probably leaning a little harder on him because, you know, he's an older guy, but at the same time, there's not a lot of there's not a lot of money to be made from streaming at this point. You know, it's, you know, it must be resolved to the fact that as long as you're going to be a professional musician, touring is going to have to be a big part of that life.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that like, unless you have some like, unless you're licensing a lot of material, and licensing stuff is hard. Every year licensing music is harder and the money goes down. So it's harder to get a sync deal or sync license, and then what you get paid for it you know, you might get something from like an international corporation, and you might get $500 for like an all-in sync license. So all that money has kind of gone down, and touring is just so fucking reliable. Like touring is like your 40-hour a week job. It's just like it's like the most reliable, and it's like a faucet. You can just like go to it, turn it on, and it's also so connected with like selling hard copies of a record, which is really where the money is. For me, it's all about selling vinyl, and so that's like, in some ways I tour because I just run my own bodega when I tour. You know, that's how I make it work. And also, unfortunately, when you get used to touring, you get you're like a little weirder. You know what I mean? Like it's like you get used to so much compressed imagery coming in through the window, so much excitement, and so much like kind of skittering around the country. And, you know, you're just like that Goodfellas dude. Like, I'm just another schmuck that lives in the suburbs. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not moving, you feel, because it's so much of like your own sense of adventure, of adrenaline and kind of a community, you know, like so many of my friends live in other places, you know, so I don't know. I think that can be it was really jarring for me to not tour, for sure.
How you know, it seems like you've definitely settled in, you know, as far as you know, it's that obviously like a tour with Not a Surface Grade. I know the first time I saw you, actually, I think it was actually the first time I was really, you know, made familiar with your music, is you did a lot of shows opening for Beulah. I want to say maybe at the Great American Music Hall.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I did 2 with them there.
Yeah, right around. I think 4-Tracker had just come out, or was just about to come out at the time. You know, but it does seem like at the level that you're at, in order for you to really kind of make money touring, the best position is to be a support act. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you're saying it's not the best position, right?
No, I mean, it is, right? You know, as far as like, as far as, you know, getting out in front of people, you know, obviously a lot of people are familiar with your music, and there's a lot of built-in support. You know, you had that crowdfunding campaign, but really to kind of hit that next level,
Oh yeah,
you sort of need to be out there with, you know, somebody who can fill out a big 3,000 person venue.
Opening up for other bands. It's interesting because it's almost like it's like pay to play, like when you open up for a band. Like bands will do it because they it's almost like they'll, you know, what's funny. Okay, so when I opened up for Beulah, I got paid $250 a show. That was 2004, right? So when I
opened 2004 money, that's like $100,000 in 2020 money, right?
It's $100,000, and now support slots are still $250.
Jesus.
Like you can open up for, like, you can be in a, you know, 3,000 cap room and still be getting to. And the reason is that it's just like you're paying for the opportunity to play in front of someone else's crowd, and it can click or not. I mean, it really depends, and it's also like it's really hard to get those slots. Like it's really, really tough. I mean, they're ultra competitive and like, but yeah, if you can afford it, it's great to open up for other bands. But like the reason why bands stop doing that is because they can't afford it anymore. They get locked into this, like, that's why I just like went all in on house shows, because it was really the only way that I could reliably, you know, make like 60 grand a year touring, you know? And
yeah,
like,
that was the last time, I think the last time we spoke was when you were out in New York for one of the house shows. How does it actually generate money? Is it literally people passing the hat around?
No, it's interesting. So I mean, I think that some house shows are like that, but the genius of the booking agency that I use, they're called Undertow, and the genius of Undertow is that, and this was the guy that runs it, Bob Andrews. He has managed Pedro the Lion forever, and when Bazan kind of like bailed on the Pedro name and started doing solo stuff, he reverted to playing house shows, and they both kind of collaborated in honing a model for house shows. And this is what they came up with, and it's actually like fucking genius. No tickets at the door ever. Like, so you can't get a ticket at the door. Everything's pre-sale. They try to price and limit the tickets to a number that is just going to sell out. So like wherever you are, the idea is that you sell out the show. And it really would run from like 35 tickets to 70 tickets, let's say, depending on the market. And tickets are $20, $25, no fees. There's no opener. Shows start at 8 p.m. No amplification. And that's the rule. So everyone who gets interested in like Undertow artists or goes to those shows, they kind of know those rules. The other thing that's amazing is that, like, you can bring your own liquor. It's Wild West. You can do whatever the fuck you want. Like, tons of people like smoke weed, and like usually the hosts provide liquor. Usually,
I was going to say this all has to be at the discretion of the person who owns a place. Like, obviously you don't want your house trashed.
Yeah, but it's wild because it's almost like a very self-selecting, and it's an amazing community of people. Like, I've never seen anything remotely weird at a house show, but I've seen like 4 million things weird happen at a club. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, and the house show vibe, it's almost like I've never even seen anyone like knock over anything in someone's house. You know what I mean? And like, but it also, usually the hosts are down for it. They're like, they want to have, I mean, it might be Tulsa, it might be Albuquerque, but this to them, it's like an elevated night of like, they want to show off their house. They want to have like this curated art event at their space. Mm-hmm. And it has an energy and like a, I don't know, like a uniqueness it's intoxicating. I mean, like, so all of those rules, people bring food, people will come early and meet each other. You know, everyone's sitting down in a space, a group space, people start talking, hanging out. And then what's cool, every show, I play for 2 hours. So at 10 p.m., everyone stays. So it's just like a hangout. I mean, I've been at a house show until 1 a.m. on like Wednesday night because everyone's just hanging out. And this, it's incredible because it doesn't have the same exhausting, fatiguing brutality that spending time in a bar does, you know? And it's just like, there's no sound check. There's no like load in. Like I just bring my guitar and then I take a bunch of weird fucking questions and like, and roll with it, you know, and take requests and like.
Wait, so it's like, it's a combination performance Q&A. Is that right?
Oh yeah. I mean, for me it is. I know that there's some, you know, it's funny, but it really depends on who's doing it because I've seen some undertow artists where they're actually like slightly uncomfortable with being that like unmediated, right? Because it's like, there's someone 2 feet away from you. And like you have to control the room and kind of connect with people in a way that you just would never do in a club. You just wouldn't do. And some people find it deeply uncomfortable. And also it doesn't reward like an ironed out repetitive set. You know what I mean? They work when it's just like, you're just like rolling out material and paying attention to what's happening. And I take anonymous questions because it gives people a chance to ask like stuff that's weirder and more interesting. And then they don't have to feel like responsible for what they've asked. And probably half the show I'm talking or answering questions. And I've had like fascinating dialogues with people.
I was going to ask you because, you know, I tend to think of your stuff as being, you know, pretty layered. Oftentimes there's a lot going on. And, you know, I guess that was sort of one of my, not concerns, but one of the things I was thinking about to invite you on here and to basically play through some, you know, acoustic songs is whether, you know, whether it's difficult for you to adapt a song that you would play with a full band, oftentimes, you know, using like playing to a track or using some samples, you know, really just sort of layering it on, whether or not it was hard for you to strip it back. But obviously you've got quite a bit of experience having done that in the last few years doing these shows.
Yeah. I mean, I think someone told me something that was interesting. They said, you know, you should have like, you should be confident that if the melody line and lyrics are good, that you can just present a song. And they weren't saying anything qualitative about my music. They were just like saying like, own the structure, the bones of your song, own it. And don't worry about, because I kind of find it like a little bit like it's like perverse in a way that you have this, you know, I'll be playing a song from a record that took me like 60 days to make, and I'm playing it in the most stripped down way. And that to me feels subversive and like funny. And it's cool because those layered, like very studio, you know, centric versions exist and they're accessible. And I love that I don't feel like fealty to that, you know, that I can just play a version of it. And I've been doing like 4 hours a week of Insta Live stuff since COVID. And I've started to do like just wildly different versions of the songs. And it's like, you can see the setup like right behind me. You can see it's like drum machine, electric guitar, amp, all these effects. Sometimes the versions are not very good and sometimes they're really, so it's like, you know, you gotta like do something, you know? And so, and I've just never been, I always thought that I'm a cover artist. I'm covering my own material. So I never felt like, and I felt like it'd be good. It's better that it's vastly different, you know?
Are you realizing that they're not very good after you've actually played it? I mean, are you really like actually just figuring out the song live on Instagram?
Oh yeah. Sometimes I'm in the first couple bars of a song and I'm like, this isn't good. And I just have to keep going. You know what I mean?
You can't abandon it and start over.
You can't do it. And then the goal is to make it better. The goal is to figure out, sometimes I'll start a song and I'll just be like, okay, the tempo is so fucking off. I need to like figure out how to scan this song in an entirely different way. But that's what's great about the Instagram stuff, is that it's like, I've always had a theory that things that aren't taken seriously by the culture have a great advantage. Do you know what I mean? Like graphic novels or rap music, right? Or like I don't know, the Drain Gang or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like stuff that doesn't have this like critical mass. Like it's just so often going to be better and more interesting. And so I kind of am all in on the stupidity of Instagram Live and like how it's like a shitty mono signal coming out of your phone, and you need to like figure out a way, and you can't monetize it. You know, it's like I love that it's like half my friends, they're like, "What are you doing on Friday night?" And I'm gonna be like, "Oh, I'm free after 7. I'm gonna do 2 hours of Insta Live." They look at me like, "You're a fucking idiot." You know what I mean? And I actually love that because I am an underdog and I root for the underdogs. And I think that like most of the good shit is like Florida. You know what I mean? Like it's like underdogs. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
like,
you're a Gainesville guy, right? Aren't you
I'm
from
a
there?
Gainesville guy. I'm
Yeah.
definitely a gay. I mean, also like I lived a lot of places in Florida, but
Sure.
and also LA. People hate LA.
People
Like
do
LA
hate
is
LA.
an underdog city, and it's like
Yeah.
one of the great cities in the world. It's like a
Yeah.
phenomenal place.
Well, I mean, okay, underdog from the standpoint that you know, I'm in New York, and I am from San Francisco, so you know, I do have a little bit of animosity towards the city, but like it's also the second largest city in the United States,
Yeah.
so there are a lot of people there. I mean, it's, you know, in terms of just like of sheer human population, it's not that much of an underdog.
Yeah, but I would say this, that like the pre 9/11 New York, its favorability ratings are very, very low. Do you know what I mean? Like do you remember there was a time when like before like the Twin Towers collapsed, that like the average like you know like US citizen would project some kind of energy onto New York, whether it was just like this like decadent hipster place or a bunch of just rundown fucking criminals and tagged subway cars. And like, I mean, I really felt this when I was moving from, I mean, I probably played in 2018, I probably played like 120 shows. And then in 2019, I probably played 120 shows. And people would always ask me, because I had like started moving very early, or given my intentions that I was leaving San Francisco and I was going to transition out of the studio, and the sheer amount of animosity that I heard in literally every city, like, because I could be taking questions in Seattle, in Portland, Maine, in like Atlanta. It was like no one else ever has an opinion about a US city. Like, do you know what I mean? Like people in general,
or at least like, nothing that uniform. I think that we talked about it, you know, and I was like, oh, that's great. You know, I hope you like it.
Yeah. And like, you know, it's interesting. There's like Houston would be like a close second as far as like, I love Houston. I've always been I think Houston is one of the great food cities in the US. And like, so there's also cities that are just wildly overrated in a way. And I would put San Francisco in that kind of box. You know what I mean? Of like, if like I found living in San Francisco to be impossible. And if I told like any average person in Europe or here that I lived in San Francisco, they'd be like, "Oh my God, that's incredible." Like that would be like their generalized response, you know.
I love San Francisco. I'm from, you know, I'm from right outside of San Francisco, but it is, and in my current job, I did, you know, go back probably like 6 to 8 times a year, and it's hard. I mean, it's you know, I don't recognize it in a lot of ways, and it's you know, I think Joan Didion said that New York is a city for the very young, and I think San Francisco is a city for the very rich and the very poor. You know, even more. San Francisco is even more than New York is. Obviously, there's quite a bit of that here. You know, it's a financial center of the country and possibly the world. But something you don't really see in New York in 2020 in the same way is, you know, you'll be walking down, you'll walk past Twitter HQ, and then it's the Tenderloin a block away, and there'll be somebody like literally defecating in the street. It's hard because it is a wonderful city, and it's just really, it's difficult to watch it go through that, and obviously difficult to watch like human beings be forced to do things like that in a very public way.
Well, and there's a vibe in San Francisco that I remember. I was walking through the Tenderloin at night, and it really felt like, I remember passing like a group of dudes, and they had a bonfire in like a barrel, like it was like a cut, you know, a barrel that was cut open, and it was like a full-on blazing bonfire. And I was like, like this is like interesting. Like this is
Yeah,
like
that's
like
like something that you would see in the Warriors, you know, and just be like, oh, what a relic, and something that's probably
Escape
heightened.
from New York, Warriors, or something you'd see in a favela. Like it's like this is like, again, you're 2 blocks away from like not only Twitter HQ, but like all of the tremendous amount of like almost like near private, you know, like apartment building, like private courtyards, secure, you know, like there's, you know, like Mint Plaza, which is like a public plaza, which has like security guards, you know, like walking around. There's so much like filtering out of like the most vulnerable class in San Francisco. The thing is, New York has a middle class. Like San Francisco really doesn't have a middle class. And
well, what we have that San Francisco doesn't have is space. You know, obviously there's gentrification happening all over the place, but you know, we do have these 5 boroughs, and there are places for people who aren't, you know, independently wealthy to live.
Yeah, and also you could get a 1-bedroom in Battery Park now for like $1,000, right? I mean, like rents have fallen, and rents have never been. I mean, one bedrooms in the Mission were peaking at $3,800 a month, and that's a shitty 1-bedroom, you know.
Yeah. I'd love to hear, before we go on, and I do want to talk a little bit about the EP, and you know, you mentioned shitty mono signals, and I think that's a good transition into that. But I'd love to hear one of the weirder versions of a song that you've discovered that kind of works. Do you have something that fits?
I do. Actually, do you want me to play you a new song?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'll play this. I mean, I just wrote this song, and it hasn't been.
That's amazing.
It hasn't been released or doesn't have a title. It's like, it's new.
Is this on the upcoming record?
This is going to be on the upcoming record, which is probably going to be out maybe like February or March.
Amazing. What's the title? No, the song.
Yeah, it's well, it doesn't have a title yet, but
okay.
it really does have a title. And I usually come up with titles at the end, the very end. But it's I mean, I don't know, I probably wrote it less than 2 weeks ago. So
okay, is this COVID influenced?
No, but it is. Yeah, I mean, yes, in some ways. Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, first out, I shout out my fees for like playing a live show, a la like I'm a rapper, and I was like building the back studio in my garage, and I got obsessed with like the connection between cables, and then the kind of like the lost connection between me and friends around the country. But it's I mean, it's kind of about losing touch with sanity, and that's definitely COVID related. Yeah, I mean, it's called Conjuring the Demons, which, so, I mean, it's not, that's the chorus is Conjuring the Demons. And that's really about like the danger of waiting for inspiration so you can write a song, right? So you're like, you know, these are demons, right? They're like, they're terrorizing little creatures that you have to like be friends with and deal with. And during COVID, that is, it's riskier. There's less distractions, and I'm home a lot, you know, so I have like long stretches of like forcing myself to write, and it gets intense. I'm gonna plug in the mic, and we're gonna make sure that this mic works. It'll sound a lot better, but I won't be able to hear you. So I'll play the song, and then I'll just pull the mic. So, sure. Does it seem like you can hear me at this mic? Okay, cool. And then tell me if it's popping or anything. I think that this level is good. I'm gonna get this close. Okay. Do you hear the guitar come through? It sounds good? Okay, good. Here we go. Well, I'm gonna pull the screen down so you can see the guitar a little bit more. That will look better. I'm leaning this against an alarm clock. We'll see what we've got. Okay, here we go. Conjuring demons, waiting for the footfalls. I
crawled into the party line. $3 a minute, it was not my dime. There was a confused kid on the other side. Hello, it was me in 1989. Conjuring demons, waiting for the footballs. Pin to pin and cable to cable, surely we can conjure that demon, we are able. How many ones held that mystery in my hand, but not since? How many chances do you think we get? Month to month and state to state, burn the sails and cut that acetate. The lowest I'll play for is $2.25. That's the minimum to keep the dream alive. Conjuring demons, waiting in the shadows. I like you, but I don't like me. So it's tough going, as you can clearly see. Hot to cold and cable to cable, surely we can conjure that demon, we are able.
Boom.
The rapper thing is really funny from, you know, the standpoint of like of perhaps the most modest brag ever put out on record.
Yeah. I mean, there's like rappers that are just like, I get 80 grand for like one verse. And they do get 80 grand for one verse. And I just thought, like, well, most of us are not getting 80 grand for one verse.
Yeah. I heard somebody talking about this recently about you know, obviously, like it's just a big part of like hip hop generally, especially like, you know, popular radio hip hop, to make these brags. And, you know, early on in a rapper's career, you know, it's aspirational, right? Here's all of the things that like I will do or hope to do based on the music that I'm creating. And then they get to a certain level like of Jay-Z where he's just like, you know, shouting out Picasso or talking about, you know, like you know, hanging out with like Mark Benoff. I don't know if that's an actual example, but like, you know, the brags just become like, they almost become mundane in the like in how ridiculous of a life this person is leading.
In the Jay Electronica record from last year, which is I think one of my top 3 records from last year, Jay-Z says he says, why wouldn't you think that I would have a watch like a Saudi prince? And it's just like so fucking genius.
That is a weird one too. I'm not going to go into this too much, but like he was having an affair with one of the Rothschilds. Are you aware of this?
I didn't know that.
That Jay Electronica that maybe like I think they had a kid. I think she was like married and she, you know, this like of like one of the ultimate like old money families, to such a point that they are like the root of a lot of, you know, of wealthy conspiracy theories and quite frankly like some pretty like anti-Semitic conspiracy theories too. But well, she was like,
Jay is totally anti-Semitic. Jay Electronica is. Unfortunately, he's a total fucking like Elijah Muhammad dude, you know.
Which is, I mean, it's, you know, and I think that he uses his relationship with her like as kind of a way into that. You know, I don't know. That's a whole nother conversation of just like how to square a very, very problematic artists with the art that they create.
Oh yeah. And Nikki Hilton married into the Rothschild family too, which is
right.
Yeah.
I highly recommend if you haven't yet. And actually I found out about this through the TrueAnon podcast. I know that you are friends with some of those guys, but they recommended the Paris Hilton documentary that's on YouTube.
It's good. Yeah.
It's excellent. Yeah. It's excellent. So Conjuring the Demon, this is actually something I'm sure that we've talked about this at some point, and it's just something that interests me, and I like to talk to artists about it generally, about whether the expectations of muses and of channeling kind of the creative process are ultimately problematic and counterproductive for somebody making music.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you are talking about this, because I'm doing the artist way. Do you know this book at all?
I don't.
It's really interesting. It's basically just like, it's just a book about, it's a book about structuring creativity, and like part of it is that being creative is like very mundane, and that there's like a certain amount of like housekeeping with being creative. And so the first thing you do is you wake up and you write 3 pages of absolute like garbage, like whatever trash. And it has to be like relatively fast, but it's 3 pages of writing is intense. I mean, first off, your hand gets cramped. I mean, depending on how large you write, but I write really small, and I just like kind of like rifle through 3 pages of just like stuff that I make sure to put in recycling as fast as possible, because I don't want any.
If you're like me, I never write longhand. I never write anymore. Everything is typing. Everything is done on a smartphone. So, I mean, that in and of itself must be kind of a radical process.
And it feels great. It feels like, actually, it feels irritating in the beginning when you do it. It's just like, God, I really have to do this. Like, but it's interesting because it's really, it's like predicated on the idea that like there's nothing special. Like there's not like a moonbeam, like, shooting through the window with this, but there are certain things that I do believe. Like, I think David Lynch is pretty interesting with the stuff where he says stuff like you need like 6 hours of boredom to have like 15 minutes of like real creative epiphany, or I don't know, it's like 4 hours, or I don't know.
But Lynch is a big TM guy too.
Yeah, he's a big, and he's in the there's a culty part of that stuff that I really just know.
Yeah, but I mean, I find it interesting. I've been reading up on it. Obviously there's a lot of, and a very like diverse array of people are in it, like Jerry Seinfeld and David Lynch and like Howard Stern. And I do think, this is a bit of a side, but I do think it's one of those things that like has actually helped people. But much like, I don't know if I'm going to get like pulled down from YouTube for making this comparison, but much like Scientology, it really has evolved into being such a big moneymaker that it's monetized in such a way that they remove people's access to it, and you can't get any benefit unless you start paying into it.
Oh, it's a straight up scam. My friend got like a mantra it was like $1,800, and that to me, it's like there's like a lot of cognitive dissonance. The idea of paying for some arbitrary phrase that could really be any phrase that you're just, it's like you can meditate.
Yeah.
First off, you can get Sam Harris's Waking Up app and ask them for a free year, and you can have like this unbelievable guided meditation platform that is free. It's anti-commercial, it's anti-commerce, it's anti-capitalism. It's great. And like I don't know how TM, by the way. So it's like, I'm sure there's like TM people that are completely angry about whatever has happened with like LA hijacking and like, the stars, like kind of like access to this stuff. But like, I mean, the whole idea of this stuff is that it's not connected to like commerce, right? Like, so I never understood that. And that kind of, I'm a huge Lynch fan, but it really bums me out, his like connection to transcendental meditation. But
yeah. Well, the book is interesting because this is something that I've been thinking about a lot. I'm finally, excuse me, I'm finally in a mental space where I feel comfortable doing meditation again. And I couldn't at the beginning of the pandemic for 2 reasons. One, just huge amount of anxiety.
Yeah.
It's impossible to, it's just impossible to, you're supposed to shut down your thoughts and you sit there for 10 seconds and you're so overwhelmed that you're just like, today is not the day. And then the very pragmatic issue of I couldn't close my right eye all the way, which made it
Yes.
really difficult. But
Yeah.
one of the things I've been thinking about, even though I am not doing nearly as much outside of work, I'm obviously not traveling at all. I used to travel all the time for work. There used to be a lot of different things vying for my attention and time. I still find that's the case to some degree, to such a point where, you have to really decide what you're going to, in the morning, what the beneficial thing you're going to do is. Is it going to be meditation? Is it going to be yoga? You're doing this, this kind of course where you sit and write, but it would be great to do all these things and to gain some sort of benefit from them. But I guess you try them and just see which one works best.
Absolutely. And I am meditating in the morning and at night. So that's been huge for me. And I just do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night. And then I also run 5 days a week. And if I disconnect from running, my mental health will go to shit, like for sure. Like running to me is like, it's essential, or I just go crazy.
When did you start running?
Maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And it was really just about depression. And then once I started running, it's like if your floor is going to be like a 3 out of 10 for happiness, your floor, if you're running, is like a 6 out of 10. And it just became like survival, like it just became like, wow, this is, first off, running is ugly and it's not fun at all. And I run, the time that I run is like, it's like my break from work. So it's like around 3 or 4. And in LA, it can be like punishingly hot. And I've just learned how to run in I've just learned how to run in like the nastiest weather. And like, but it really, there's this like anxiety runoff with running. You can't get too worried about stuff because it's like this like steam release valve. You know what I mean? It like, you're getting beat up, brutalized. Like you're running, toxins are like, like you're sweating, like everything's like leaving your body, and you have this like incredible release the second you stop doing it. And from that point on, it's like very hard to get too worked up about anything. So I find it essential.
That's interesting. So you feel like the real benefit of running, it comes after the run?
Yes, 100%. Like before, I'll kind of do anything. So I usually run at like 3 o'clock, and then my whole schedule is like I run at 3, I come back, I have coffee, and then I do, if it's like a day that I do, my Instagram shows are always 5, they're twice a week. And then usually in the morning I'll wake up, and then the first thing I do is just like do like studio emails, studio work, invoicing, and then try to write or record. And then the moment before, like an hour before I start to run, I will literally do anything to delay the time that I have to go run. My body doesn't want it. I don't want to do it. It's like, I'll play games. I'll be like, maybe I should have a snack. Maybe I should cut this apple into pieces and like sit in the backyard. And so I'll do it. I'll do anything I can do. And then at some point I know I have to I run. It's terrible. Truly, it can be truly terrible. It's like not, especially if and this is what's good about running, is that it keeps you honest for like drugs and alcohol. Like if you're even slightly, and I mean like if you have like a glass of wine the night before, and then you go running the next day in 90-degree heat, your body's like, dude, what are you doing to me? Like you really feel whatever, if you've compromised your health, you really feel it.
You don't feel any, there isn't that sort of endorphin rush while you're doing it. Are there positive physical? No,
it feels terrible. Just awful.
I've talked to, like, I have, I've run off and on, and I don't know if I'm just a bad runner or if I just have a bad runner's body, but my body breaks down.
It's terrible. Yes.
Like my knees are bad. I got a sciatica in my back, and I'll have to stop for long periods of time because like I just am physically unable to do it. But I've heard a lot of people talk about, I guess especially like distance runners talk about runner's high.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well,
but
for
you don't
me,
really get that.
It only shows up the second that I run on the same trail in Elysian Park. The second I'm descending this hill and I'm like seeing the end of the trail, it's just like, I'm almost there. I have a bottle of frozen water. So it's just like, I'm just like running to this like frozen, delicious water. And then the second that you stop, it's just like a rush of it's like very powerful and
So it's seeing the light at the end of the tunnel is a
yeah.
positive for you.
And then knowing also that that's like, and I work out before I run, I'll do push-ups and pull-ups and all that stuff. So it just means that it's like that stuff is over for the day. And then if it's like I do 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off. So it's like, if it's like the end of a 2-day thing, I'm just like, fuck, I don't have to do this tomorrow. And it just, I think that this is just like, I just try to mimic how we lived 20,000 years ago if I can do it. You know what I mean? Like that's why I go to the beach all the time and I hike all the time. I just want to be like an ape. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it would be like this, but like with a saber-toothed tiger chasing it. Basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Or you're ranging, you know, in the savannah looking for like something to kill, you know, like somehow we were doing this, like.
Yeah. So do you, you know, I had this conversation with somebody on the show about meditation, and like I've always contextualized meditation, or one of the benefits of meditation being the creative process, being something that you do to get out of your head, to you know, make you better, more creative. And I've also heard that about running. You know, I've heard that running is, for distance runners, for a lot of people, it's a good opportunity. It's like songwriters, especially, you know, the whole having inspiration when you least expect it. But these are ways to sort of get out of your routine, get out of your head, and go out and do something. But do you find that they are creative in the same way as sitting down and writing 3 pages?
I think that for me, it unlocks something in your brain for later. You know, like it's like there's so much gunk and trouble in your you know, like your frontal lobe, whatever this noise is, you know, and like that you just kind of have to clear it out. You know, it's like, it's the one reason why people are often creative. Like people will say that they're often like have like epiphanies when they're hiking or walking, or when they're in the shower, when they're kind of like doing gardening work or whatever. It's because they're starting to like turn off this like noise. And like, I think that like you've got to find a way to clear out that junk. I mean, when I really listen to the dialogue in my head, it is fucking maniacal. It's like everyone has this. It's just like this crazy chatter, and it's like it's gotta be like, that volume has to be lowered at some point, you know. So, but for me, the thing with what the real thing I'm after is no depression. Because depression for me is a major problem, because if I have like a crash, like a mental health crash, I will not be able to do anything. You know what I mean? I won't be able to sit still. I won't be able to like be in a room. I won't be able to like look at a piece of white paper. So I'm just trying not to have a mental health crash. Like that's most of what I'm after.
I think the last time we talked, I think you were like right on the other side of one of those.
Yes, yeah, because my mom had died, and I was like just coming out of like this feeling, like this period of like severe depression. Yeah.
Yeah. How have you not spiraled during this?
I had some really terrible weeks. I mean, I had like, so it's like, what day is it? It's Friday.
Saturday.
No, it's Saturday, right? So on last Monday, and I kind of keep track of all this stuff. Last Monday, I had like incredible suicidal ideation. I mean, it was just like a day of just being in home, in bed, on the couch, like having the worst fucking thoughts ever. I mean, it was like it felt like I was imperiled, physically imperiled by like, and it's very, first off, I think it's very natural to want to kill yourself. Like I'm not afraid of it because I've had suicidal ideation on and off, and it's
a scale, right? So suicidal ideation is a scale, and at some level, just like considering it or thinking about the fact that suicide exists is not necessarily. Yeah.
And the problem is when it starts to like obsessively overtake and override all other like thinking, and that's what got scary for me. But you know, I'm in therapy. I have a great therapist. And I had a therapy appointment on Wednesday, and my therapist gave me a book to read. It's called like Welcome to the Swampland. I think it's like a Jungian analyst, and like that really helped me. And then just continuing to run, swim, reach out to friends, start scheduling stuff, start like really like taking responsibility for my own mental health. And I've had like some really productive weeks and months in COVID, and like a lot of like severe depression. I mean, COVID just doesn't agree with my mental health at all. It doesn't work, you know. For
Yeah,
me.
it's the realization, and I say this as somebody who is like dealing with something during this, which is obviously like compounded it and you know, in some ways like made it exponentially more difficult to deal with. But the thing that you realize, and maybe it takes you a couple of weeks or a couple of months into something like this, is that all the other baggage that you had prior doesn't go away.
Yeah, it does not. Yeah.
All of the depression and everything else that you were dealing with before, it just compounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, how have you dealt with, I mean, how like, where are you right now with just dealing with not only the physical part of bells, but just like the mental fallout stuff for you? Like, where are you with that stuff?
So the physical thing, you know, you've got your therapist and I've got my acupuncturist, who unfortunately, I think my copay is up. So I've got about one more appointment with her, but I've got, I can show you all of my bottles of Chinese herbs that she's given me here.
Great.
This is jade screen, which is supposed to be really good for your immunity. This the one thing that has like really kicked my ass in a good way is juju seed extract, which has just been like incredible for my anxiety.
It's great.
You know, you know, she said to me, I had my penultimate appointment with her yesterday, and she basically said, you know, I think that you would have healed faster, but you just seem like you're incredibly stressed out and anxious.
Yeah.
And I said, literally no one in my life you talk to would think that was a revelation. Like I'm generally an anxious person. You know, and I work myself to the point of just of completely stressing out. So, but ironically, you know, I took like a week or so off when this happened. But ironically, one of the things that's helped is throwing myself back into my work.
Yeah.
You know, the day job. You know, as soon as I could really start speaking again, I started recording the podcast again. I started doing a newsletter, you know, just kind of an opportunity to force myself to write something a little bit outside of my comfort zone once a week. She gave me this heart. This is a quartz heart that I'm supposed to use to like rub on my face.
That's great.
You know, I talked to, so you and I were talking about this in our very brief conversation before we started recording, but the last night I recorded an interview for an upcoming episode of the podcast with Ralph Nader.
Wow, shit.
He, you know, and I knew like roughly what I was going to talk about. He was very on point, wanted to talk about his book. But in my research, I've realized that he, in 1985, had Bell's palsy.
Whoa.
And did it in a really public way because he had to. He told me that he was doing, I don't remember the specifics, and the episode will be up in about a week or two from now, was doing a debate, and after the debate ended, just I think went back to the hotel and it started for him. But he was on a tour, and you know, he's spent his life fighting for other people, and felt that the thing that the current, again, I'm butchering this because I don't remember the specifics, but the current advocacy project he was doing at the moment was too important for him to just stop touring.
Yep.
So he would tell people that and this is something I found too, is like it's the best thing to do is to tell people what you're dealing with.
Yep.
You know, so like, just so it's not weird, the fact that your face looks weird and that you sound a little weird. His big joke at the time was like, at least you know that I'm not talking out of both sides of my mouth, which, you know, was like, it was a cute little thing.
Yeah.
But you know, it was I don't know, it's hard, right? Because when you're dealing with health stuff, you owe it to yourself, and you need to take some time off to try to regroup. But I think for him, the fact that he was able to get out there and keep doing the thing that he was passionate about was really useful. And I say this as somebody who, like, next week, I'm finally getting out of the city for the first time since all this started, and, you know, taking 5 days and wandering around the woods in upstate New York.
That's going to be incredible, man. That'll be
I hope so.
really, where are you going?
I'm going to New Paltz. I don't know if you know New York at all.
I don't. I just know where Hudson, where everyone lives, where
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah, it's right around Hudson. It's right around the Hudson Valley, and there's a giant. It's called the Mohonk Preserve. This is this huge nature preserve. So, you know, and one of the things that I found helpful as I'm taking these walks in the morning is, I slowly worked up the strength to be able to walk over the bridge into Manhattan, into Central Park, and there's this beautiful little nature sanctuary at the bottom. And if I get there early enough before everybody else gets in, I can just sit on a bench. I've gotten really into ambient music.
Yeah.
And sit there and just put ambient music on my headphones, and I can meditate again. And am having some of the best, like, really restorative meditation sessions that I've probably ever had.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah. I you know, this is a good segue, I think, is one of the things that I've experienced with depression, and I don't know if you've dealt with this too, is anhedonia.
Is that like the feeling of no pleasure, right? Like you can't really feel like
and it's like it's books, music, it's the things that usually bring you pleasure. You can't get anything out of. And this experience specifically, I found that there was a period where I just wasn't listening to music, which is very, you know, uncharacteristic of me. And then I kind of weaned myself back into music by really getting into like ambient music, post rock. I was listening to, you know, a lot more jazz than I had in a while, stuff without lyrics, and I was able to work back up to it. For you dealing with this current moment, what role has other people's music played?
Well, I think for me, just to get into the anhedonia, like for me, it's like usually the opposite. Like if I'm like really sad, I'll get like incredibly tender and like emotional about everything. So then I have to be really careful what kind of media I consume, right? So I can, you know what I mean? Like, I have to like become more vanilla in what I take in. I started watching when I was like having like trouble on Monday. I started watching that Errol Morris like docu-series, Wilderness of Errors, which is really great.
Yeah, that's a hell of a story.
Fucking wild. And I just listened to that podcast, and I love Janet Malcolm. I've loved the whole story. I find it completely fascinating. Yeah. Like, and I like that he's all in on like McDonald possibly being innocent, and like, so music has been, so that's it. There's two things I would say. Music has been like really, really important for me this year, because I've had so much like stationary time at home where I've kind of just like been working a lot at home, and in building the studio in the backyard, I'll just like be playing music all the time. So the problem that happened though is that, and this probably is going to happen this fall or winter with TV and movie stuff, is that the pipeline just like stopped because of COVID. You know, like people either like shelved the records. We had like records that were made at the studio, and we knew the artists were shelving the record, because for many bands it's incredibly problematic to release a record and not tour on it. So it feels like it's like pointless. Like for me, I think it's toxic to make a record and not put it out. I think you're fucking crazy. I just think you put it out and make another record. Like if you tie this too much to capitalism, you're like really fucking with what's special about music. And like stuff doesn't sit on the shelf well. You just need to get it out of your head, and then you're a better songwriter, a better like artist once something is out and released, regardless of whether you're touring on it or not. And so the pipeline just like slowed down, and it's like it's harder. Like every week it feels harder. Like rap feels like it's kind of clicking again, but like, 21 Savage just put out a record. Like there's like Arm and Hammer. There's like a few things that just came out, but like mostly the pipeline is like, feels like it's like half speed right now.
We need to talk about that off of the video stream. I know we talked about hip hop before, but like I missed a good chunk of the year for new releases, and because again I just wasn't listening to music, and I was going back and trying to find some like good rap that I missed this year, and I don't know if it's just because of COVID or if it's an off year, but like I don't know. I haven't found a ton of stuff out there, new stuff released in 2020 that's really clicking with me.
It feels like to me on like for everything, it's harder this year than it was last year. But I have public playlists on Spotify that you should check out. I have like a rap playlist, probably like 2 or 3 hours.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like the new Run the Jewels a lot. There's an artist called D Smoke. I don't know if you know him at all, but he's like somebody that I listen to and that clicked with me a little bit. But yeah, so you are finding that there are good rap records that have been released in the last 6 months.
There's stuff that's coming out. I mean, you'll see there's a lot of singles on the playlist, but it's like over 2 hours. I mean, there's definitely some stuff for sure.
Yeah.
But last year felt great to me. I mean, it felt like, because you had like art rap and like backpack rap and like trap, all this shit was just like, it was just like exploding. And rap is like what, like 60% plus of all streams on Spotify. Like rap, I mean, what indie rock is probably like 3%. You know what I mean? It's just like, I mean, it's like
it's like Zydeco and then indie rock down here.
Yeah, exactly. And then so it's like, and like, yeah, I mean, rap is still like antisocial and dangerous and fucked up and funny, and like that stuff is sometimes harder to find in indie rock. And like, but like I mean, for me, I mean, I've also been getting into like, I've been getting into a lot of electronica stuff. Like for me, the Arca like one song record that came out, that kind of was like changed my life, that album. But like, yeah, there's always, my thing is that if I'm not finding good music, I blame myself. I think that it's out there and I'm just not digging deep enough. It's like that I'm not listening to stuff like The Garden or 100 Gex stuff that I would maybe not like be drawn to, or A.G. Cook, and I need to like recalibrate what sources of music are gonna be. And I think it's funny, I think that like Pitchfork is gotten really snoozy in the stuff that they recommend in a way that I didn't really feel that. I mean, maybe the Condé Nast like takeover is like complete. And I think that like even Fantano's gotten like, a little bit like, I just think that people get like a little tired and they just get like a little less weird. And I get a lot of recs from people, and that's really where I'm getting my stuff from. And I follow,
I assume and this is somebody who's done a lot of, coming from somebody who's done a lot of music criticism, is I think in a lot of ways it's like being a critic or writing about it, and it's just the music that you listen to generally oftentimes takes a very similar trajectory to the people who make music.
Yeah.
And most people, even at like this point in my life, I think most of the people that I went to high school with like most people, I think just sort of whatever your musical taste was in high school or perhaps college, if you're a little more refined, it's just kind of frozen in amber for the rest of your life.
When the neurons were firing, that's when, I mean, I was talking about this last night with friends, where I could, when a band sends me an email to record at the studio, and then they list the bands that they're inspired by, and then they want to like include in the dialogue and production, I can guess their age. Like I can guess their age immediately, and that to me is sad. You know what I mean? Like
is that part of the process? Is the RIYL, is that part of the process for submitting to the studio?
Well, it isn't. It's just what bands. So unfortunately, bands will. I think that like a real disconnection that bands often have is they think that like kind of like checking, let's say like Granddaddy or Amnesiac or like Helplessness Blues or like 1,000 Gex, whatever it is, whatever record they're like they think that by name checking that it'll actually like that's like 50% of arriving at the destination of some radical restatement of purpose in their own music. And I mean, we've had bands with a straight face mention like Autechre or some very, very complicated shit, and then talk about booking like 4 days to make a record. And do you know what I mean? It'd be like me saying like, you know, I want to like understand all of the buried ruins in Rome. Like I want to understand the history of the Roman Church through like Catholic cathedrals and parishes and et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm telling you that I have like 35 minutes before my flight, you know, out of like, it's like, it's incredibly delusional and completely insane. And I just have to manage those expectations. So that's how I know that what bands will name check that, because not because we have a barrier to entry. We don't. I'm like a doctor. You know what I mean? Like anyone can come through the door as long as they're not psycho. You know what I mean? And like I'm just there to make them healthier and make them like a better version of themselves, you know, through like care, you know, and help.
Yeah, I think it was 2 times ago that I interviewed you that the third eye blind thing had just happened.
Yeah.
Which is just like, you know, the ultimate example of not checking your ego at the door.
Yeah, and that was like, they were like most of the young guns, their ego stuff is knowable to me. Do you know what I mean? Because I used to be that punk ass kid, so I can deal with it. But with Third Eye Blind, and it was really just Stephen Jenkins, it was so performative and it was so outsized that it was like, when it was happening, I was like, this is going to generate some good fucking content for me. Like I knew, like I was like, when he was like kind of like circling the room and some like some kind of like dramatic gesture to get me to lower the rates or whatever. I remember thinking like, this is good. Do you know what I mean? I remember thinking like this is positive like shit for me, you know?
Do you think, I mean, you know, you said it was kind of performative. I mean, do you think that to him, in a weird kind of fucked up way, that being a diva and acting like that was part of the record making process?
I just think it's being like a narcissist. You know what I mean? Like I think that like, I mean, hold on, there's someone in my front lawn. To see what they're doing.
Yeah, I can. Let me throw on a. Okay.
No, we're good. Okay. But tell me when you want to break. And but I think that, well, the funny thing is that Stephen Jenkins, like after he tried to negotiate me down on our rates were $250 a day, by the way. I mean, he was just like, it's like yelling at a taco tent about their prices. You know what I mean? It's
you on
like,
that 250 number? That's just your that's your magic. That's your golden ratio. 250.
It's the golden ratio, right?
Also, absolutely. What Trump paid in taxes for the last 10 years.
Oh yeah. Actually, yeah, he paid $750 in 2016, 20, like amazing. But he never showed. Once they got the room, they booked it for like 3 months. I never saw him again. Like, so I don't even think he was making records. I think that that's also part of like the performance, you know, is like to make it a big deal, but like actually not do the work, you know.
Wait, they booked it and he didn't show up?
I never saw him once there, ever.
Was the band there?
Sometimes, but you could tell that they weren't doing anything.
So there was just an empty reserved studio block with nobody.
Yeah, with like an engineer and producer and like fax machines and stuff, kind of just like humming, and then no activity. And I was there all the time. Like, I mean, I lived 10 minutes away from the studio.
The album came out though?
I don't think they did any work at the studio, like, because they got dropped from Elektra, I think, right, like maybe a couple months after they left. And so I don't know what the follow-up scene was, but my gut feeling is that zero productivity happened in the studio, which is kind of, actually.
what is your and I will leave the topic of Third Eye Flying because I know we have talked about this at length, but like, what is your sense of how they ended up at Tiny Telephone?
I think that we are often seen as like, it's like we'll get like rich tech people in, and it's like a transactional thing. They're kind of buying into culture. They're buying into like a place where there's like the kitchen has an ant problem and there's a jar of weed out for people to smoke, and there's like, you know, at one point in Tiny Telephone there was a guy living on the roof in a car. Do you know what I mean? So it's like they're buying into like this like Mad Max shit, you know, and like we're not. The guy lives on the roof because the guy lives on the roof, not because we're trying to provide some like theatrical, you know, like demonstration of like dangerous living. You know what I mean? So
it's just literally, it's your life. I mean, it's just an extension of your life.
It's what we can afford, you know. Like, I mean, and so, but we would get people who were kind of like, I don't think the phrase slum. I don't think you can really use the phrase slumming it, because I think it's like pejorative. But like that's what the phrase that felt like would be like bouncing around in their head. You know what I mean? Like that they were going to a part of the mission where like literally all the garbage collected at the bottom of the hill because of like the wind currents, and you know, where you could touch the off ramp of the 101 freeway. And that's part of like making crazy dangerous music, is being in this like ratty ass corrugated metal building. And so but it was a transactional thing that we made money from. Do you know what I mean? I'm a business person. I had employees, and I have like insurance payments and like crazy rent payments. And you know, when you're running a business, you really you'll do anything, you know, like Chevron, BP, Shell hiring death squads in Africa. Like none of this stuff surprises me.
Firestone. Yeah.
This is what you do, you know, like makes you a psychopath.
So let's I'd like to do two more songs before this is over. So like one at the end and one now. And I'd like one of them, if it's cool, I'd like to request Pale Horse, if you're comfortable playing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But we can either do that now or dealer's choice now or at the end, whatever you're happy with.
We'll do Pale Horse now, and then you tell me anything you want to hear at any point. Man, I'm a jukebox, man.
What are you rifling through here? Can you show me one of those?
So I have all of my, I mean, I don't really need to do this because I know the song. So I have like maybe 70 pieces of paper here that have lyrics, but they also have notes on them. So like with Pale Horse, I don't need any notes, and I'm not playing with like drum machines or anything like that. But there's often like kind of complicated notations about either changes I've made to the song, or key changes that I've recently made to the song, or tempo markings, and stuff that is absolutely like, I mean, look, there's probably like more, there's nothing but piles of these lyrics. And like,
so you know that if you've written the song, it's probably in there.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of songs in here, but what's wild is that I'll change, this will also dictate what version I'm doing. So there's different sheets that have versions. Okay. So this one is like, I'm using a drum machine that's set at 101, 101 beats per minute, which is like almost half, it's like cut time. It's like half speed of the song. Mm-hmm. And I have some like delay and effects settings written on here. And there's another version of Overcoat that is not electric, and that is in a different key. So all of these things they're helpful just because of the sheer number of songs. And by the way, this is my Pale Horse sheet, and I've probably played, 200 or 300 shows with this same exact piece of paper. So this has been to Europe. This has been all across the country. It's, it's had coffee, beer spilled on
days. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's almost like it's a good luck charm. Like I'm so used to having these pieces of paper in front of me that I just couldn't play a show without even if I don't need it. it's like so. It's like Jerry Garcia with his teleprompter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I remember hearing about that, thinking like that's like so strange, and then I'm like, oh, I get it. It's like a calming thing, you know?
Yeah, like a safety net almost. There's two reasons that I've been thinking about Pale Horse. You want me to give them to you now, or you want me to give them to you after you play? Okay.
Give them to me now.
Did you watch Twin Peaks: The Return?
I did. Loved it. It's great.
Okay. So you know the woodsman, the woodsman rants about yeah. So that's one.
Yeah.
Reminds me of Pale Horse. And the other, which I'm sure you're very aware of, is Jeremy Corbyn.
Tell me about.
Do you know about this? Okay,
no.
So I'm not a poetry guy. I'm sure that I've read the Shelley poem before.
Yeah.
But Jeremy Corbyn, you know, when he was running, he spoke at some sort of festival, some huge outdoor festival in the UK, you know, and he gave this really rousing speech, and he quoted the Shelley poem that you quoted this. It was like one of the kind of the most inspiring things that I've seen from a politician, you know.
That's cool.
Yeah, you know, we are many, they are few.
Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's great.
I'll send it to you when this is over. But it's just like, you know, because I mean, obviously, like the Shelley poem is amazing, but for me, the Shelley poem is very much associated with the song.
Yep, absolutely. That's amazing. Is Jeremy Corbyn? He was labor leader? Is he still? He got ousted, right? Or like where is he?
I think he's still. God, I won't say that I know, because I you know, somebody will call me out. I'm not entirely sure what happened after. I mean, he basically. I mean, that election was a shit show. You know, they had so much. You know, I mean, like even in a way that like the 2016 election here wasn't, because there just seemed like so much populist power behind this really genuine leftist candidate, and it just wasn't even close.
Yep. And what's wild is that like dealing with Brexit, they're not even close to dealing with this shit. I mean, it is gonna fuck up that country for decades. Yeah,
I mean, it's probably good that they didn't deal with it earlier, that all of these mechanisms weren't in place when COVID hit.
Yeah.
Because I can't even, if they were like really so disconnected from the European Union and this huge pandemic hit, they would have been in such a tough spot.
Totally fucked. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, I'm going to plug in this mic.
All right, sir.
And I will take it back out right when I play. So we got Pale Horse. Let's make sure this is on. I'm going to scratch lightly. Cool.
From the haunts of daily life, where is waged the daily strife, common wants and common cares, cuts the human heart with tears, rise like lions after us slumber, and in greatly unknowable numbers. Let the tyrants pour around with apocalyptic sound, on the charge of iron wheels and the crash of horses' heels, rise like lions after us slumber, and greatly unknowable numbers, free the blood that must ensue. We are many and they are few. From the horse, and the prison, pale as corpses newly risen. Knives are drawn, now let them see. Standing tall, they say they're free. Your strong and simple words, set to wound as sharpened swords. White as targets, let them be. With their shade to cover me. Rise like lions after us lumbering in greatly unknowable numbers. Free the blood that must ensue. We are many and they are few.
Horse from Cellar Door.
I'd like to quote one of my favourite poets, Percy Bysshe Shelley, who wrote in the early 19th century many, many poems and travelled extensively around Europe. But the line I like the best is this one. Rise like lions after slumber, in unvanquishable number. Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep had fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few.
Cool. That is really amazing to hear that, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it's obviously incredibly rousing the way he says it, and you know, pretty relevant, I think, to the idea of government and you know, the good kind of populism, and what happens when, you know, people kind of can rally behind the politician. Obviously, in hindsight, like a little tainted because things, you know, didn't quite work out that way, and
Yeah.
and in a lot of ways it feels like are not. Let's just say we're experiencing the bad kind of populism here right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I'm curious, you know, obviously, and he goes on to say that in the piece about, you know, what the poem meant to him. How did a pretty large chunk of that poem make it into the song?
Yeah, it's interesting because just hearing that reminded me how much I changed the words, actually, which I forgot how much I changed. And like, I just remember hacking, kind of, because it's a lot longer, I think, than in Pillar. I just remember the first time I read it, I was like, man, I wanted to kill George W. Bush so much. Like, I wanted his fucking head because, like, just the war crimes. And a reminder that, you know, Obama made a decision. Someone was talking about how they, like, the left was going to, like, make sure that Trump ends up in jail. And I'm like, don't be so sure about that, man. That ain't gonna happen.
No, I mean, especially given, like, you know, and we don't have to talk politics too much, but especially given all of the ways that he not only continued a lot of the mechanisms that were put in place, but like has actually increased a lot of the presidential overreach and you know, the drone strikes and everything else.
Dick Cheney loved Obama, loved him. Yeah. He said he was prosecuting the war on terror better than Bush, which is a terrible thing to have someone say about you.
Such a backhanded compliment from somebody like Cheney. You know, and then obviously, like, you know, seeing Hillary Clinton pal around with Kissinger was not particularly heartening.
Yeah.
But to you, Shelley, it sounds like to you the poem occupied a similar place as the one that it did for Corbyn.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like, and this was the hope with Bernie of just like, you know, we have this like mobilized movement that is, you know, Bernie was filling up stadiums. You know what I mean? Like, people were like, in a way that like like it almost never happens on the left, because people on the left, they're not generally drawn into like fascistic kind of like groupthink, you know, And so that was like, it was anomalous, and it should have been respected, and it should have been pursued. And, you know, I like, it's funny because Trump made these like comments about like that, you know, during the debate about how Biden shouldn't be given credit for having these like socially distanced, you know, kind of rallies, because literally only a couple people would show up anyways. Which is for some pure Trump, but like
it's what, you know, I was talking about this with somebody before. It's just like he says some funny shit. Like, you got, you know, the bare minimum
comedy gold.
And him is like, and it's stuff that you feel bad for laughing at, but it's like the guy is good with a burn.
I mean, John Oliver did a like a little segment about how, from a comedic, like a technical standpoint, that Trump is like objectively a brilliant comedian, and his timing, his gesticulations, his kind of like his flow, it's magic. I mean, he's like an intuitively brilliant like communicator and comedian, and like that, you got to give out credit. I mean, do I want him to die right now? I hope that COVID is fucking like, it's like exploring like the deep vascular regions of this morbidly obese motherfucker, and is about to shut his body down. But you got to give him credit, you know. I
gotta ask you, this is, you know, another way in which I've been thinking about some of your music during this is, maybe you've discussed this before, but the COVID, a lot of the COVID conspiracy theories are so tied to Bill Gates.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously Bill Gates occupies a special place in your back catalog. And really, like, Bill Gates Must Die in a lot of ways does have this sort of conspiratorial underpinning, right? I mean, are you getting a weird sense of deja vu of seeing Bill Gates be at the center of a lot of these vaccination conspiracy theories?
It's funny because I think about this stuff a lot. I'm obsessed with QAnon. Like, I mean, I'm like I went through, and you probably did too. I went through a period where I was totally obsessed with Scientology, and I'm like 100%
in the sense, in a clinical sense.
In a clinical sense, like 100% obsessed. I'm obsessed with like controlling like vast numbers of like what we would call like willful people with agency who get like and I am very pro-conspiratorial. I don't like the phrase conspiracy theory. I don't, because it's like you could really just tarnish anything. Like is it a conspiracy that the police routinely you know, control and abuse like wide swaths of POC like populations in America? It's not a conspiracy. It's happening literally every day. And like,
yeah, I mean, it's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy in the sense that it is, you know, that there's a large group of people like actively doing it.
Yeah,
like in the sense that like some conspiracies are, you know, actually like based in truth.
Yeah, and I think that to me it's not useful language, because it's like conspire, like breathe with. Yeah. I mean, it's like it doesn't tell us anything. Do you know what I mean? To say and like the idea like I mean, there have been like very like there's some like super vanilla conspiracy theories that have been shown to be untrue. And there's been wildly crazy speculative shit that's been shown to be somewhat true, like Gary Webb's, you know, investigations of like CIA, like, you know, cocaine, like interest in Central America as a way to fund off books, extra constitutional wars, and like freedom fighters. And it's like that shit happened, and they made sure to kill Gary Webb to make sure it like didn't go anywhere. And like this stuff, I mean, we have an intelligence community with like essentially a black budget. So they're going to do some crazy ass shit. But like, I'm obsessed with Q in a way that I think that like, first off, Q, you probably have kind of gone down this rat. I got like hip to this because I listened to Behind the Bastard. So before the Reply All podcast came out, I'd heard the interview with Frederick Brennan, and who, just to remind everyone, he started 8chan. And was kind of radicalized by Gamergate to leave 4chan and start on a mushroom trip, start this more freewheeling, like Wild West version of an image board. And like
it's been suggested that he is Q.
Yeah, but it's really this. It's not Frederick Brandon though. It's Jim Watkins, the current guy who's running 8chan. And my strong opinion is that he is Q. Like from being obsessed with this and pouring in hundreds of hours, this dumbass, evangelical, like low rent pornographer pig farmer who lives in the Philippines, who his hosting company hosts like the Daily Stormer or whatever, the Nazi, he's all in on this shit. And like, he probably sees Trump as like too mild, and like, but I'm fascinated by the almost like archetypal interests of Q and how in some ways they're like, it's like a child's version of a conspiracy. Do you know what I mean? Like involving Oprah and Ellen and Tom Hanks and like, do you know what I mean? It's like, they're literally just like iconic figures that are in front of you. It's like, you're not even digging very deep. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing that really, I talk about this a lot with friends, but the thing about it that really jumps out at me is, because obviously Pizzagate is tied very closely to these people. There's a ton of overlap between the two, and that was a case of the WikiLeaks Podesta emails of them finding instances of Podesta mentioning Italian food.
Yeah. Over and over again.
Yeah, which is weird. Like, apparently, I haven't read the emails, but apparently the frequency with which he mentions them are in fact bizarre. But like, things like walnut sauce were coded for pedophilia, but and then obviously like the whole thing gets to such a point where somebody walks into Comet Ping Pong Pizza in DC with a semi-automatic weapon, demanding to see the basement that doesn't exist. But the thing about a lot about these conspiracy theories specifically is, I think they call them crumbs. They follow the crumbs. They bake the crumbs. Is that a lot of the source material that they're getting is correct? Obviously, like, there is a big problem with very powerful people in pedophilia, but they're not drawing any of the right connections. I mean, they weren't particularly early on with Epstein, right?
Yeah.
Epstein was flying around on a plane with the most powerful people in the world, the current president and a couple of presidents ago. It was all there in front of them, and they were just making all the wrong conclusions. Yeah,
and also not being like. Well, I mean, what's funny is that what drove all of the Pizzagate stuff was like kids were having a blast. So you have like these 12-year-olds on like 4chan and 8chan. They're like reading the menu, literally in tears, coming up with like hilarious abbreviations for like, a child who likes bondage is like, you order a pizza with pepperoni or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like they are literally like, this is funny. This is not. And then you have some like, the guy who like strapped on an AR-15 and went looking for the basement. He's like some dumb fucking he might be super smart, but he's like, as far as the internet goes, he's super gullible, and he is like very unaware of the cultural kind of like hilarity that precedes him taking this seriously. And he's like an evangelical, he was like a hardcore evangelical Christian. And he's like, this must be stopped. And yeah, so it's like, of course they're like, it's like it's like people that like, get excited about the new, like, I don't know, like Fleet Foxes record. It's like, you do realize that there's like thousands of other records that are better, right? That are just coming out. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't have to just pay attention to the thing that's like biggest in front of you. Do you know what I mean? That has like the banner on Spotify. And like, no, I'm not putting shade on that record. I'm not crazy about that record, but it's like, it reminded me of that. It's like Epstein was clearly running a honeypot, like kind of like set up for intelligence agencies. Clearly, that's why he's getting sweetheart deals, and that's why he's like, he has like really, really powerful people that are like that are like either on the planes or helping him get like house arrest where he's not even being surveilled, and he's not like like he's not adhering to any of his probationary like requirements whatsoever. Like, so yeah, people like have a lack of, like, to me, a lack of cynicism that I think is very funny.
He was plucked out of obscurity by William Barr's father.
Yeah. Yep.
Which
yep.
like.
Yep, and that's
he was a teacher at his, I think his kid's like preparatory school or whatever, right?
Yeah, Dalton School. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and when so much of that's why I'm obsessed with like the boards. Like so much of 4chan and 8chan is just like, it's literally kids that are actually very smart. They're very funny, and they're driving. Listen, like, so when they're saying that Tom Hanks, so I guarantee you the first mention of Tom Hanks as like testing positive for coronavirus, he's actually really being arraigned for crimes against children. Someone was in tears fucking posting this shit up, because it's like objectively very funny. And then some like older, dumber, slower idiots like are actually scouring, because it's a role-playing game, man. They like, everyone's got nothing to do and like no agency. So they're like, I need to, where we go one ball,
Yeah, and an interesting new dimension of this, something I was talking to Denise Kaufman, who she's in the band Ace of Cups. I don't know if you know them.
I know.
Like a all female 60s rock group, like the only all female rock group in like the Haight-Ashbury, and they recently reunited. They've got a new album coming out.
Whoa.
But she's living on Kauai, and she teaches yoga, so she's very much a part of the wellness community, and she's watching all of these other people she knows in the wellness community get pilled. It's just, have you been following that at all, about the like new age crossover with QAnon?
Yeah, because it's in LA, and it all comes from anti-vaxxer shit. That's the bridge. Yeah. It's definitely in LA. My friend, who's a photographer, like the main photographer for the New York Times on the West in LA, two of her good friends are queued up. So it's like, whoa.
I think I sort of I noticed this a bit before, but it really, as I said to you before, having heard one of your songs on the TrueNon podcast recently, as I think you're friends with the producer, is that right?
Love you. Yeah. We're gonna do a podcast together. I love.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But hearing Exodus Damage, pieces of that played on a 9/11 truther podcast.
Bush did 9/11.
Yeah, part 5, whatever. I've got let's just say I have like mixed feelings about that particular situation. But like going back and listening to the song, it does seem like there are some allusions to 9/11 conspiracy in that song.
Yeah. I mean, I told you I'm very pro conspiracy, like, but I think that even, and there's the 9/11, like Bush did it or they let it happen, right? So I would say I'm more in the road of like, not they made it happen, but they let it happen. That road is so potentially wide and so potentially convincing, and there's like some vanilla like areas where you'd be like, building 7 was, that seems odd. Like there's definitely going to be an entrance point for anyone, but that conspiracy. And I will, like, the other day I was like drinking with some friends outside, and I was trying to convince people to listen to that TrueNon thing, and they were like, everyone just immediately thinks you're a nut job. And I said, like, listen, it might be something fun for you to do this summer to like have this new fun thing.
I guess so, but does it concern you to obviously it's just like, it's an illusion in a song, and it's not any sort of like tacit approval of this idea, but like it's a hard line to walk, right? It's a hard line to walk to be like, hey, like, here, listen to these, there could be something here, but obviously you don't want to get pilled, and obviously like you don't want to be like fully down like the QAnon rabbit hole. So how do you keep your head above water, and how do you stay sane in that world?
Well, I think that like I think that if you're first off, the QAnon stuff is so poorly constructed. It's like it's like a litmus test for like stupidity. Like if you look at Q drops, like just look at QMap, right? They're content free. They never ever. It's almost like you're playing like Zork or something. It's like there's no real definite. It's like Nostradamus style where you can't reverse engineer anything and be like, that was wrong, because nothing is really said. Like, there's been 100 times where it's like the documents for the adrenochrome addicted Democrats and Pelosi and Hillary, they're like these papers are being like literally stamped right now. The National Guard is en route. Like, it's like hundreds and hundreds. It is such a low res, low quality conspiracy theory that it's kind of like funny. I mean, I think it's genuinely funny. So I don't think that, like, unless you're like really dense, I don't think anyone smart is going to get like blackpilled by paying. But I think that if, like, let's say, forget 9/11, because 9/11 almost has too much, like, it's like it has like thermite, like
there's baggage. There's a lot of baggage.
There's baggage, and no one's going to come to that like with the same amount of joy and fun that I will. But I think that, like, you could just say, like, I'm going to get interested in why the U.S., for instance, spent, like, why and how did we spend $3 trillion in Afghanistan? I mean, first off, that's hard. It's hard to spend that much money in a country that has literally no infrastructure.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? What was the operation? What were we doing there? Do you know what I mean? So I think that those things, if I was going to tell someone, like, I am like deeply cynical about any like national security strategy statement by the US government. I just assume that we're doing the worst shit in the worst way, in the most illegal and hidden and awful ways possible, and that there is no strategy whatsoever, other than like getting Northrop Grumman like to use up whatever kind of like stealth bombers so they can get a new order in. Do you know what I mean? I just think it's just like depleting stock at this point. You know what I mean? It's like a regenerative thing to keep the economy, like, because this is Keynesian. You need to have like government stimulus like encourages, like well-being in sectors of the economy. And this is like the only thing that America can do. I mean, we should have been, building bridges and paving roads or whatever during this. It
shit. Is like our chief export now, isn't it?
Oh, 100%, man. Like, so I don't know what to. I think that's a great question, Brian. I just would say this. I think that, like, I'm so cynical about any overlay where like U.S. defense or military involvement happens, that I just think that if you looked at literally like rare earth metals, or you looked at like what we're doing in the Ukraine or anywhere, I just think you'd be like fascinated, depressed, like overwhelmed. And as far as like Q stuff goes, like, again, it is so sloppy. It's like there's no narrative. I don't even know what it's about. You know what I mean? It's like, go ahead.
So let me ask you this as it pertains to a very current event, which is when something like, take Trump getting COVID, right? I mean, obviously every single person who is not probably even some ardent follower of Trump, it popped into their head that this whole thing could be a fake out, right? I mean, I'm sure it occurred to you. It occurred to everyone. And I've seen with varying degrees, friends of mine or people I know online go into one camp or another. As somebody who follows a lot of conspiracy, does your mind immediately go to what is the conspiracy here?
Well, I mean, I think that like things like actually happen that are not complicated. Do you know what I mean? Like Occam's razor is real. Like I mean, like, coronavirus is real. Like COVID, like when you really take into account like excess deaths, this we're probably at 230, 240, 250. Like this shit's real. And by the way, I went to the beach with someone who wouldn't answer the question whether COVID was real, and which was like fascinating to me. Like, cause like that to me is like psycho shit. Like, do you know
Were
what
they
I
just
mean?
not? Were they not social distancing? Did they not have a mask on?
They are, and I listen, I love them. I have a high tolerance for, you know, I have like libertarian right-wing relatives, right? So I have a high tolerance for nonsense. But like, and I would identify to the left of Bernie. So like
Yeah,
my
same.
political
Yeah.
kind of spectrum thing, I if I fill out a questionnaire, like a 30-minute questionnaire, I'm so far over in that fucking cube, man, that it's like, so like I clearly, you know, Bush did 9/11. Like I believe certainly there a lot of this stuff is true, but I'm also like not, my life is not going down rabbit holes of like what happened. I just want like fucking healthcare and housing and minimum income. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not, and I want to deeply undermine the U.S. military, which is at the heart of everything terrible and awful in the world. But my first thought was like, yeah, COVID's real. This dumbass is like running around laughing, like talking about how we need to talk to Biden's therapist about why his mask is so big, like equating it with some emasculating thing. And it's just like, that's what happens when you like fuck with reality and biology and science. Like I think he has it. I hope he dies from it. I mean, I do. Like, I purely and simply hope that he dies from it. I really think he's a fucking war criminal. I think he's a criminal in general. And I think that he like, I don't have a problem with like biblical eye for an eye stuff. Like he probably is responsible for 100 to 150,000 deaths. I mean, right at the beginning of COVID, he said there is no reason to wear a mask. Like he made it a political statement to not wear a mask, and he complicated any federal national response to a pandemic, which is completely psychotic. So my first thought was like, when I was like, whoa, he really got it. I thought it was funny how he threw Hope Hicks under the bus. I thought that was very funny. And like, maybe Hope but he also he gave it to a lot of people who are really fucking pissed. There's a lot of people on the right who are very angry at his behavior, because it's like, rich people don't want to die. They have comorbidities. They're all a bunch of fucking gout, you know, like infested, you know, obese old people. So like, I mean, I've read some, definitely, it feels exhausting, like all this like prognosticating about like, this is as a strategic move. Sometimes there is no strategy. Sometimes things happen.
Yeah. He obviously gets way too much credit for his cognitive ability and his ability to play 3D chess. But what I will say is I do think that there's truth to what the right calls Trump derangement syndrome, from the standpoint that like he collectively broke all of our brains.
Yeah, 100%.
To such a point that like something like you said that like seems like you know, it seems pretty clear on face value, we automatically take it to its logical conclusion of like, you know, why should obviously, and I think there's, I understand why people don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth, but it is people's first impulse that this is part of some sort of like larger game aimed at the election, that he's completely faking it.
Well, it's interesting because you could also see it as my initial thought was, and first off, there is Trump derangement syndrome's real, and that's transference. When, you know, whether you call him a sociopath or psychopath, like there is transference when, I mean, if you have a family member that is fucking crazy, they literally make you fucking crazy. And like Trump has made like not just the left crazy, he's made everyone crazy. And like, but my first thought was, I think that he knows he's going to lose to Biden. I think that he knew that Biden was like kryptonite to him for a long time. Think about how long he's been focusing on Hunter, and he's been really singling out Biden from a long. He never was worried about Bernie. He wasn't worried about like Pocahontas or like dumb Beto or whatever. Like it's been Biden the whole time. Part of that is that Biden's adjacent to Obama, who is literally given him derangement syndrome. But like, I think that like when he started seeing, he's a pole obsessive. when he started seeing the numbers not move, Biden's been at 7 to 8% for a long time. I think it started fucking with his confidence, his immune system. My first thought was, when I saw the debate, I was like, there's something off with him. Like, I'm sure you read that article in Slate. It was fantastic. It was basically like during the 26 debates with Hillary, he was joyful and like bouncy. Yeah. Like he was kind of like looming over Hillary, and like he was so leaden and so like self-aware of like some impending crisis, whether he knew like, you know, intuitively that some fucked up shit was around the corner or his immune system was already in trouble. But my first thought was, whoa, he knew something was up. His immune system was crashing. It's getting close, 30 days away from it's hard to move the numbers at some point. And that like, there's something in his body. Like sometimes, listen, it's happened to me when I've been on tour where I just can't take the stress anymore and I just get sick. And it's almost like my body's like saying like, we need to go into some fucking kind of capsule mode here. And maybe he just was like, this is too much. Like for seeing like a contested election and like national fucking, you know, DHS like troops out there and like, you know what I mean? Like, and like, I mean, it's too much even for a fucking nut job. So maybe it was part of like a health collapse, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he is definitely somebody who I think that like for 99.9% of what he does, the most obvious conclusion is the right conclusion, because I don't think that I don't think he's somebody that has complex thoughts, and I don't think he's somebody who's capable of really planning things down the road. He's very much like, he's a creature of instinct, and he's acting in the moment. And I think one of the ways that he has broken our brains is that we assume that everything is some kind of complex chess move that he's making, when it's like, I guarantee you that the vast majority of what he does can be chalked up to some sort of animalistic impulse.
Yeah, he's completely intuitive. But and I will say this, that there's no narrative of this being planned, because Trump, the things that Trump hates are like signs of weakness. And like to be airlifted, to be have even his voice, which is like really hoarse, does not sound good or powerful right now. Like stuff like that, I guarantee you, is so upsetting to Trump. Like none of this reads well for him. Boris Johnson, if you look at the numbers, he did not get a bump from this. Like it's like, you're not going to get a sympathy bump that's going to make up 7 points. And also 30 days left, you're taking off vital time to make up gains.
He doesn't get a sympathy bump, but what he does get is, if he does recover, you know, and they're saying that he's got only moderate symptoms right now, if he's able to get COVID and bounce back within a week, he can very much shore up both his base and just for the Republicans generally by saying like, look, it's obviously just the flu. That's the one, I think, arrow that he really has in his quiver right now is, but remember, what I've been telling you all along is this isn't deadly. And look, I'm 74, I'm morbidly obese, and obviously had several comorbidities. But you know, I've been able to bounce back. So clearly this isn't a serious condition.
But remember too, hold on one second. Someone's trying to call me. I'm just gonna
no worries.
I'm just gonna let text them. But but remember this too, that's like now the story unfortunately is connected to a lot of other people, other like Republican operatives, campaign manager. If someone gets sick and ends up on a ventilator or dead or something, that's part of the story too. So there's donors, there's people, and remember that we're 4 or 5 days away from someone's immune system crashing with COVID. So this story might get.
I will say that I don't think that the Herman Cain thing moved the needle as much as it could have or should have. And obviously, like, you know, it's very clear on paper what happened. He contracted the coronavirus at a Trump rally. He wasn't wearing a mask, and he ultimately died from it.
Yep.
But I don't think, you know, the narrative is going to be a little bit different, but like we've already seen this play out to some degree.
But you've got 57% of the country that thinks that Trump is handling the virus terribly. 57%. That's a tough number to win re-election with. And then he tests positive. He's clearly reckless. He's got these fucking Don Jr. and all these other chumps are not wearing masks against the rules of the debate. You have the optics are that none of this is like what any Republican strategist would ask for. None of it. None of it's good.
Yeah. We're I think we're running a little bit over right now. You want
we're over. Play one.
Let's do one more. Yeah.
Do you have time?
I've got I've got all the time in the world, my friend. Do you have something lined up? Well, you're putting a capo on, so like clearly you know what you're doing.
Song from
oh, great.
Do you want to hear a song from the EP?
Yeah. How do you pronounce the EP, by the way?
Oh, I just call it EEP, and it's the name. It's the sound that you make when you realize that the pandemic is not like the summer of 2020, but it's like 2 years. That's the sound you make to yourself silently.
It's the air and life leaving your body.
Yep, exactly. And the shock. Okay, I'm gonna plug this in, and then we'll sign off, and then I'm gonna my thing. You're gonna do your thing. I'm gonna go to dinner with my friend. I've gone to one restaurant since the beginning of COVID. I went to like a Mexican, family style restaurant in Santa Barbara. That's the only restaurant that I've been to, and I'm going to a restaurant tonight. So that's like wild for me. Okay, this is called Lure, Mice, Condemn, Erase, and it's about a cult that I'm gonna start. Here on the land, we got solar wells and a solar array, 51 acres and a crystal lake. We're so glad you're here on the land. The party rolls on. We'll top your glass if you stay upright. Wait on the grass under the pale blue lights. We're so glad you're here. This could be your year. We've got all night to say what it takes all night to say. It takes all night to say what we say anyway here. It's all right to say what it takes all night to say, and it takes all night to say what we say anyway here. This could be your year. Here on the land, the party rolls on. Infinite playlist when the sub bass hits. Empire acid and crystal fits. We're so glad you're here. If it's all right tonight, we're gonna record this for the archives. We got all night to say what you never say anyway, except here. Just give in, just collapse, fall apart, a total relapse. We'll take you in and build you back, fuck you up and show you the true path. Dear, this could be your year. Lure, mice, condemn, erase.
All right. What is the what's the cult? What's the deal there? How do I sign up?
I know, right? Well, so I'm part of this well, it's like a problem now, but I've been part of this like communal land in West Sonoma, which is it's like right in the center where everything is just getting torched all over all
like
the time.
A kibbutz or what?
It's like it's got a kibbutz vibe, absolutely, for sure. It's just raw land, and it's like a bunch of friends that own it together. There's just a solar well, and we camp. and that's it. And we go hiking into the park. The whole park's been burned down. 6,000 acres is gone. So like that whole area it's just like it's been incinerated. So
yeah,
but I am obsessed with cults. I've thought about this is kind of Epstein adjacent, because the narrator is clearly alluding to the fact of getting information out of the prospective like cult member and recording it and breaking down that person and then using that information. So I don't know. I just was obsessed with like how cults operate, and then knowing that I'm co-owner of land that could easily support of like a huge cult. I started like kind of like running the the math.
Yeah. What would your cult look like?
You know what's funny is that I'm too Dutch and I'm too much of an anarchist to actually run a cult, because you have to be so structured and brutal, and it's got to come down to money and or like controlling people like through money and sex. Like that's all like Rajneesh, like all that shit. It's all the same Branch Davidians. It just comes down to the same shit. And you make people cut off ties. You isolate them, you make them do things that are, like just the breathing exercises, that Osho was doing, stuff like that. You put people in altered states, you drug them, you make them fucking crazy. And there's nothing in me that wants to do any. I'm just like, you show up or don't show up,
I wonder. I've read a fair bit about cults. I'd love to read more about the psychology of them, because I wonder. It's a bit of a chicken and the egg. I mean, sometimes it's pretty clear. Jonestown seems like a pretty clear case of somebody who like kind of, he more or less like knew what he wanted to do as far as manipulating a large group of people. But obviously a lot of these cults, I've got a book about the Source family over here. That's a good example.
I worked at the Source.
At the health food store?
I worked in LA, the one where like Annie Hall was filmed in the porch. I worked there. I was a waiter.
What year was that?
1990.
Okay, so that would have been. I mean, that was
he was dead. He had already died of his hang gliding accident.
Yeah.
But everyone there was Source members. My boss was like, they had all of the iconography in the office. They were all Source people. And they would tell me about it.
But I guess what I'm getting at is, obviously like a lot, most or all of them start off as this sort of kind of utopian thing, especially the ones that are very much a part of the culture of the 60s and 70s. And I wonder how, what the breakdown of them is between people who want, as you said, like, you almost have this like anarchic idealism. So how, and that is a bit of a promise of like everybody sort of like gets what they want and they get their own fulfillment. How many of them earnestly start like that, and then somebody sort of like feels out a position of power and it congeals into something more dictatorial? And how much of them are really just, the product of a sociopath who has planned the whole thing out from the beginning?
Everything I've seen is that it's the latter, because the first thing that you need to do is accrue capital, and you have to have brutal rules in place of stripping people from their assets, and to make it stick, to make sure that if a family member shows up, that they're either like totally intimidated or harassed or terrified of like, legal action or just any kind of retribution. So I think it's got to be there from the beginning. And like, oh, go ahead, Brian. What were you saying?
No, finish it up.
And like, I just think that the amount of energy that it takes to get 50 people to do anything, that you've got to be truly fucking crazy from the get-go. Do you know what I mean? Like, this has got to be. Oh, my cat's here. I'm going to show you my cat, Brian. And then,
Is this cat on the cover of the new album?
No, that's a Clover. This is Matt, her sister, who's like an angel, like my baby. They're both fucking incredible. But
are you becoming a Mark Maron cat guy?
Oh, I've been a cat guy. I grew up with cats. I've been like obsessed with cats from the beginning.
Yeah. LA
Always.
seems like a good place to be a cat guy.
Oh, it's so great. Yeah, I mean, my cats just sit in the window and hang out, and like, yeah, it's awesome.
How many are you up to?
2.
Okay, that's a manageable number of cats.
It's not that crazy.
Yeah. Are you like? Do you think that at some point it will get out of control?
I don't think so, because it's like there's limits of. I mean, I tour when in normal times. I tour all the time, and I like have people stay here, and I don't want to leave my cats. And the more cats you have, probably the more you don't want to leave them. So I think 2 is perfect. They're just so fucking chill. They do their thing. I do my thing, and then we go to sleep. It's great.
I don't know. I don't know if I told you this, but in addition to everything else that was going on with me at the beginning of the pandemic, my rabbit also died.
Fuck! I'm so sorry.
So like as I was telling you before, like of that period of me not talking to anybody, the 3 people that I talked to in a 2 to 3 month span were the aforementioned urgent care doctor, a neurologist at Mount Sinai, and an emergency vet here in Queens around the corner. But I have a rabbit right now that I was fostering at the beginning, the kindness of a friend's, knowing that like it would have been useful to have an animal around, particularly during this point when I couldn't talk to anybody. Her former fosters very kindly are taking her next week while I'm out, because like I haven't left her for longer than like 4 or 5 hours during this pandemic.
Yep.
So she's not very self-sufficient at the moment. But funny story, when my voice started coming back and I was comfortable doing early teleconferencing, I would hear this banging sound. It would like, couldn't figure out what it was. Realized it was a rabbit. When rabbits, like in Bambi, when rabbits are distressed, they thump their back legs.
Whoa!
That's how they signal danger. And I realized that she didn't know I could talk.
Whoa!
That entire time, like I wasn't even in my apartment. I wasn't talking to myself. I wasn't singing.
Yep.
She had never heard me talk, so she was like, it took like 3 or 4 teleconferences and she was fine, but like she didn't know I could speak.
That's amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah. But yeah, no, she's my last rabbit was very self-sufficient, but I'm with you now. Like it's when I start traveling again, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't feel. I don't feel comfortable like leaving them alone for a week by themselves. They get depressed. Although you have 2 cats, right? So they can kind of entertain each other.
Yeah, they chill. People stay here. It's all good. Hey, Brian, I better go because I'm keeping my phone ringing.
For sure. John, absolute pleasure. Thanks so much. Do you want to plug anything?
And I'm just living my life. Everyone else lives their life.
So where can people get? What's your Instagram? How about that?
And everything is John Vanderslice. Venmo, Instagram, my OnlyFans account. And I do have an OnlyFans account. It's free and it has just photos on it. It's like the most wholesome OnlyFans account.
And you're not doing any hardcore penetration.
No, it's just tour photos. But I just think that it's like OnlyFans is like, to me, is very funny. Like the idea that like someone has it, like I love it.
That is very funny. Yeah, and if you do need a little money in the future, the option is there.
I'm pro sex work. It's all good. Like whatever you do is good.
John, thanks so much. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put on one final video, drop off during it, or I can drop you off. Either one is fine. Let's catch up offline one of these days.
Anytime. Yeah. I'm here, and I love doing stuff with you. Anytime you need me, I'm here.
Absolutely. John, thanks so much.
And you always ask great, thoughtful questions.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much. Enjoy your meal. Let me know how it was, and
I will.
We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Brian. Bye, buddy. What you doing?
I'll see you at another gun show. I'll call the day before like usual, but I wanted so much more. I got exodus damage bleed, could not commit some things I'll never be. So now we're talking about this, I'm starting to lose my confidence, and no one ever says a word about so much that happens in the world. Dance, dance, revolution, all we're gonna get, unless it falls apart. So I say go, 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 go down, let it fall down. I'm ready for the end, so the second lane hit at 9:02. Saw it live on a hotel TV, talking on my cell with you. You said this would happen, and just like that, it did. Wrong about the feeling, wrong about the sound, but right to say we would stand down. An hour went by without a fighter in the sky. You said there's a reason why. Tell me now, I must confess I'm not sick enough to guess. Dance, dance, revolution, all we're gonna get, unless it falls apart. So I say go, 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 go down, let it fall down. I'm ready for the end. So you hope that one person could solve everything, and for me, that's you. And sometimes that dream is a sad delusion, but sometimes it's true. So now we're talking about this, I'm starting to lose my confidence, and no one ever says a word about so much that happens in the world.